Helldivers, the cutting-edge warband, is here, and that means a slew of new weapons to check out. Our mission is to find the best weapons in the game, but what does that mean? Do any of the cutting-edge weapons even come close? Well, that is the question we're here to find out. My name is Kodiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and today we're checking out the LAS-16 Sickle. So let's get the basics out of the way. The LAS-16 Sickle is a primary weapon that falls into the rifle category. Like its cousin, the LAS Scythe, this is an energy-based weapon that comes with a heatsink. As you know, there's no real ammunition, but if you overheat the gun, you will have to pop in a new heatsink. To unlock the LAS-16 Sickle, you'll need to first unlock the cutting-edge warband, which costs 1,000 super credits. If you've been doing your missions and buying the super credits from the Helldivers mobilized warband, you should have enough, but if not, you will have to make up the difference by buying super credits at the in-game store or get back to farming. The LAS-16 Sickle can be found on the first page and can be purchased for a mere 20 metal, so very accessible once you unlock the warband. At first you might look at the stats and think, okay, this gun isn't that great, but once you get past the numbers and actually take this thing into the field, it gets pretty interesting. So to start, yes, the gun does have 55 base damage, a fire limit of 9, a recoil of 2, and a fire rate of 750. And while this is a good indicator of how the Sickle will perform, it's by no means the same as being truly battle tested. The Sickle's damage appears low, but this thing outputs a ton of lasers rapidly with its high fire rate. There is a slight delay before firing the weapon, and that's something you need to factor in, but you get used to the rhythm relatively quickly. The weapon can only penetrate light armor, meaning up to Brood Commanders on the Terminid side. Things like Hive Guards will take 0 damage from this weapon when shooting their armored heads, so you will need to find their soft fleshy spots if you hope to score any real damage. On the Automaton front, this weapon rips through all lightly armored enemies with ease. However, for enemies with medium armor and above, it's ineffective. As far as its capacity goes, you effectively have 6 heatsink replacements, but because the weapon doesn't fire a continuous beam like the Scythe, it's much easier to manage its overall heat. As with all heat-based weapons, the meter can be seen next to the 6 out of 6 heatsink indicator where ammo is usually displayed. The easiest way to avoid any overheat is to pace your shots, while also mixing in your other weapons or stratagems. With just a little discipline, you can go for a long time without ever needing to replace the heatsink. When facing down a horde, that dynamic does change a bit, and you will absolutely need to keep firing and kill as many enemies as you can. In that specific instance, you will have about 7 full seconds of firing before the heatsink fails. As far as its recoil is concerned, well, the LAS-16 Sickle has practically none. In third person, it does have a tendency to spray pretty wildly in a tight cone pattern, but in first person, it's much more focused in a noticeable example of next to no recoil. For the most part, you can keep it on target and just hold the trigger for maximum democracy. You can be extremely precise in first person mode, whereas third person mode is much better for close to mid-range, quicker engagements. You do also have access to 3 different scope options for the weapon, which makes the Sickle a versatile tool at multiple distances. Finally, on the matter of its fire rate, the Sickle is one of the fastest firing weapons currently in the game. Only the Knight SMG from the Super Citizen Edition has a higher fire rate. All other weapons, including our current assault rifle offerings, fire slower. When you take the Sickle into the field, there's a few things you need to know, and your approach based on the types of enemies you're fighting will change a bit. On the Terminid side, I don't think with any weapon really that you'll ever want to be up close with a bug. However, the Sickle can spray down most enemies easily enough, even in close range when required. Your goal should always be to keep your distance. At medium or long range, this weapon performs exceptionally, and with paced bursts, you can easily handle most Terminids that are in front of you. When you're facing a horde, that dynamic does flip, and you'll need to be okay laying into the trigger and potentially overheating. Again, use your other weapons and stratagems to try and avoid that reality, but it is something to factor in when dealing with the swarming masses of the Terminid army. There does seem to be about a 5 to 6 second cooling off period if you don't want to burn through your spare heat sinks, but it's okay to do so in a pinch. They're really just magazines if we're being honest, but the option to extend their life is super nice and super democratic. As far as the automaton side of the action, well, you're still playing the duck, dodge, dive, and duck game here. You'll want to maintain cover or run a shield pack to get the most out of the Sickle. Our best advice, simply stay at medium to long range whenever possible. A short burst will shred all light automatons, and with a single heatsink and proper pacing, you can almost never overheat and effectively keep most light enemies at bay. It's actually shocking how simple some enemies are to deal with, such as berserkers. As always, you'll do the most damage to their head, but on average you'll need about a third of a heatsink to kill each one. The shield and laser devastators can also be killed quite effectively by lasering the head or their pack. You really notice the Sickle's accuracy and lack of recoil on this front, and this is a perfect example. Other enemies like the front of Scout Walkers and of course tanks and Hulks are impervious. You can flank the walkers and shoot the vents of Hulks with decent success, but the massive laser cannons and tank vents truly can't be damaged by this weapon. As with all weapons, there are certainly pros and cons. The Sickle can't do it all, and the gun absolutely can't do anything against enemies with medium armor or up. The fronts of Hive Guards, Chargers, Devastators, you'll need another option. But that's okay, as there are plenty in the game with the recent changes to some enemies and stratagems. To reiterate again, the only heat vent the Sickle can damage on the Automaton front are Hulks, or the battery packs on the Devastators. It takes almost an entire heatsink to make the Hulk's heat vent explode, so that right there isn't great, but will work in a pinch. If you're precise, you can take down a Hulk with this plus a single impact grenade and never need to replace the heatsink. Heat is always going to be a primary issue with any of these energy-based weapons, and that could mean having to stop firing just when you need it the most. That's a huge downside of the weapon, but the ability to manage your shots more effectively than the continuous beam scythe makes the Sickle's heat easier to manage. On cold weather planets where heatsink overheat rates are cut in half, this weapon is a no-brainer, and a whole squad running Sickles could potentially be lights out. In conclusion, the LAS-16 Sickle is certainly a powerful weapon, one I think a lot of players are going to be checking out next time they dive in. Is it the meta? Who cares? That's not the goal here. We want to identify the best weapons in the game so that you know what to check out and what would work in your potential build. The Sickle is a solid heat-based medium to long-range rifle that has some real stopping power. Its high rate of fire and low recoil make it truly unique in the current landscape of the game, and if you can work around its lack of armor penetration, we could see this being a staple for droves of Helldivers looking to spread a little glorious democracy. Bottom line, it's a liberator with no recoil, more ammo, faster reloads, and high rate of fire, but with a slight delay and a lack of armor penetration. That about sums it up. Anyways, friends, let us know what you think about the LAS-16 Sickle after going hands-on, and if it's a weapon you'll be working into your normal loadout. Of course, if you like this content and you want more Helldivers 2 videos in your feed, do me a solid, hit that thumbs up, and consider subscribing. We've got more videos coming your way, so keep it right here. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.